Vault number 73 is Steve Walters. Steve is one of the game's greatest players. Immortal Bob Fulton saying Steve Walters was the best hooker to have played the game. Born in Rockhampton before moving to Ipswich at a young age, Steve made his first grade debut with the North Devils in Brisbane before moving to Canberra, where he won 3 premierships with the club. Steve was named man of the match in Australia's World Cup final win in 1992 and played 16 tests for the Kangaroos. In 2008, Steve Walters was named among Australia's 100 greatest players. He played 14 Origin matches for Queensland. Steve Walters, thanks for your time. What does it mean to you to be a FOG?
Oh, like everyone else, when you're growing up. So I was there to watch the first Origin game myself, and you know what an exciting time it was for Queensland Rugby League, and you never ever thought you would. To be honest, I was never a gun junior when I played, but yeah, it's like a tick in the box to some recognition that you're a good rugby league player in Queensland if you all want to play for the Maroons. That's for sure.
So let's go back to the start. Ipswich bred, I suppose you could say, but not born. Born in Rocky, then moved with the family to Ipswich. Tell us about life in Ippy growing up with all those boys.
It was a great place to grow up. Just lots of good memories. We were just, I would call a regular family. Played rugby league in winter and some cricket in summer, a little bit of baseball at Musketeers. It used to be just over the road there. We all played baseball too when we were kids and loved that as well. League was always a favourite though. That was the one we enjoyed. I was a bit different to the other 4. There was 5 of us. The other 4 were all really good players on the way through, and I'm not being humble there. I liked playing, but I was never much job. Alf can verify that as well if you need another witness, as well as my brothers. But I loved playing. I still enjoyed it, but I just was a bit unsure of myself. I played in Ipswich from under 6s to under 18s, and I only made the representative team from Ipswich for 2 years, for under 11s and 12s, and my dad happened to be manager of the team those 2 years, So at the time, I just put it down to a burst of good form. But looking back, maybe I got a bit of help there. But yeah, it was a lot of fun growing up. We loved it. It was a good time.
Did you know at the time, you say that you weren't as good as your brothers, but how did that affect you with the 5 boys and the 4 that you thought were better? Did it worry you, or were you trying to strive to be better than them at all?
Oh, not really. It affected me in that when we'd work out the teams, who was playing who, I was always last. But it didn't. I like playing as much. I don't remember being jealous or anything. I just thought they're good players, and because I like playing anyway. I think in those days there wasn't such a big drive about, you have to go play in the NRL. People just tended to play because it was fun, more so than thinking he's going to play NRL or going to play for Queensland, Australia. I think there's more now. As soon as they say anyone's any good, looks like, he'll do this or he'll do that. But people didn't look at it like that in those days. I don't remember that. We just remember it was fun because there was 5 of you and you could go and play for the team at the end of the street, In my situation, when we got to about under 15s, I started improving quickly, and then by under 18s, I was going okay. I got in the Queensland team both times then, so I got a little bit busy physically and just got a little bit more confident in myself, I suppose. So, yeah, but it didn't bother me all the time before that. I just accepted that's how it was. And
is that how you got to Norths from Ipswich? That there was no Jets in the competition.
Right, yeah.
So is that how you got to Norths?
Yeah, pretty well. It was actually through my older brother Brett. They rung up because it was different in those days. Of course, they rung you on your landline at home. We lived at home in 3 Merton Street. That was where we all grew up. And I remember Brett was on the phone to Bob Bax, was the main man at Norths in those days, a really good operator, Baxy, smart fella. And he was talking to Brett on the phone, and I was near the phone. I'm saying, "Tell him about your brother Stephen. He's going really good." And it's true. I'm exaggerating a bit, but the basics of it true. He's going to be a good player. They want to get their hands on him, and blah blah blah. And he mentioned me because I'd been in Queensland, and they said, "Well, he can come down and do some training and have a bit of a trial or whatever and see how he goes." And it sort of came about from that, really from after Brett, and that's how I got to North. And I got lucky because you've got to be lucky in footy. I'll argue this all day. You need to persevere and you need to stick at it, but you've got to be lucky, and you've got to play a good game at the right time and the door open. See, from my point of view, North had Greg Kinescu, but he went off to Gladstone that year to play. So I would never played first grade at North if he wasn't there. Maybe I don't go from there to the Raiders, So that's what I meant. I got lucky that he didn't go to North, and I thought, oh, that'll be great. I ended up getting a few games up there.
How important was that 2 years playing at that level before you did go to Canberra?
Oh, of course, it was great. It was a good club. But we didn't do particularly well, but I loved it, and and they were good fellas, the Devils boys in those days. They were sort of battling a bit then. They'd won the grand final, that famous grand final in 1980. There was a few of them left, and I was a young hooker, so I was lucky Big Zulu was still there too, so no one was beating me up because he was standing there. It was just a really good chance for me to play some games and get some experience and learn and get a little bit better, So, and then you got lucky to go down to Canberra from there.
How did that happen?
I wanted to try and go down. They called it, going down to Sydney in those days. They called it, which is the NRL, and that's what sort of was just changing a little bit. That's where you wanted to get to sort of try to prove yourself a little bit more. That was getting more to be. It wasn't really the pinnacle from what I can remember in the 70s, because most of them we all like watching the comp in Brisbane, but the pendulum is swung a little bit by the mid 80s, I reckon. And that's what you wanted to do if you had a chance to go down there. And South had the famous win in 1985 where they upset Wynnum, and the four best players, or the best players at South were Mal Meninga and Gary Belcher and Eddie Muller. The hooker. He was a really good player. And the Raiders tried to get the three of them to go down to Canberra. They got Mal, obviously, and got Badge, but Eddie Muller, I think he got a bit more money, or whatever reason, he went to the Bulldogs. And then I was sort of around, and someone else mentioned my name. Give this young fella a go, he might go into something, basically. And then it sort of progressed from there. So, yeah, I was lucky. The
biggest move you've ever made in your life?
It was. I tell people it's a different time in those days. They fax you up a contract. I was over John Barber, who's passed away now, who was the coach. He coached me in '85 at North. He was really good to me, JB. He wasn't a manager as such, but he was a mentor, and he helped me, put the deal together. And I went over to his office to sign it, and he was really good to me. I remember him saying, because the Raiders hadn't done very well, and we had a couple of other little nibbles, just to go and train and trial sort of from the Steelers, and there was one other one I can't remember now. And he said, mate, I think Canberra's to go. He said they haven't done very well, but they got a good setup. They're really financially secure. They're a club that's going to be strong in the future, And when I used to bump into him, he used to say, "I told you, mate," which was great advice because I just did what he said. And it just came from there. I remember we were over at his office, as I said, and the contract come up, and I signed it, and they faxed it back, and I drove back to Ipswich because we all still lived at home there. Drove back that night, and there's no computers or anything, so I got a Refidex out and had a bit of a look where Canberra was first up, because I knew it was obviously down south, and I thought, oh geez, it's a bit further away than what I thought. That's a fair drive, and to get down there, And I thought, the old Falcons, he's not going to make it. And my dad sold me the family car. He gave me a good deal on the Commodore, which we used to drive in, so he got another car, and you pack up all your stuff and away you go, It's just exciting at the time.
Did it help the fact that a couple of other Queenslanders were there as well? It ended up being almost dominated by Queenslanders. But at that stage, how well did you know Mal and Badge and some of the other boys?
Oh, not at all. I never met them. I can't remember meeting them. Obviously knew who Mal was, and Gary Belcher, and Gary Coyne was the other one.
Another one, yeah.
Corny I knew a little bit because he come from Swifts and Ipswich as well. So when I was a young fella, and he was always a giant when we were kids, and he was a really good player all the way through, Corny. So I knew him, but didn't know him well. I knew who he was, obviously, in particular. And he was really good to me down in Canberra. And got to meet, obviously, and hang out. And you just think, oh, gosh, playing the same team as Mal Meninga and Gary Belcher and those guys. So, it could be. They were obviously more than likely going to play in the team, but I was a bit further down the pecking order. So I just remember being really excited, like anyone does who goes down. It'd be no different now for a young fella going down to a club.
Was that your first introduction to Wayne Bennett as well?
Yeah, he came the next year. Don Ferner was the coach in '86, and I played about 3 games in '86. I just got in, and then I hurt my ankle, and I got back out, and Jay Hoffman was playing too good then, who'd been there, a bit of a stalwart, and it was Ryan's dad, and he was very well respected and liked at the Raiders because he was a tough bugger and a good competitor and had been a good, consistent player. So. And I got my chance again the next year when Wayne came down, that's right, yeah.
Looking back on that time at the Raiders, and we'll get to your Origin experiences soon, but a little bit like the era of Origin, you look at that Canberra side, some of the greatest players to ever play the game. We spoke about the Queenslanders, but you throw in Ricky Stewart, Glenn Lazarus, Laurie Daly, John Ferguson was there as well. I mean, I could rattle off all these names, and then they all playing for Canberra, and you're there as well.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it worked out a dream, didn't it? You know, we were in 5 grand finals, and as I said, won 3, and they're some of the real elite players of their time. I mean, there's great players now, and there will be in 10 years' time, but certainly around that in the mid 80s to late, mid 90s, there's 3 or 4 of the best players at the time. Those guys, and good fellas, and yeah, it's just great to be part of that little bit of history, I suppose, from your point of view, and to be there when they were all there. And particularly because it was before the Broncos. Early on there, so we had a lot of the Queensland fellas, as you touched on, and to play so many games with Mal and Gary Belcher and Corny, as I said, and Big Sammy Backo was there too, so, and Jacko was there for quite a few years. Kevy, me and Kevy used to, Kevy come down when mine was there, so a lot of Queensland flavour in those days.
Well, how would you like to be the owner of one of these? A FOGS authentic game ball signed by Wally Lewis at the 2023 Wally Lewis medalist Reuben Cotter. Now, all you have to do is subscribe, like, and drop a comment below. And each week, gentlemen, we'll be giving away one of these footballs to one of the viewers of the FOGS Queenslander podcast. Well done.
Well, it's good to be able to hand them on to the general public who like it, as long as we don't get blamed for breaking one of Mum's windows when they're kicking it around the backyard or tossing it around.
But this will be framed in a nice
Reuben Cotter's name. Wow.
Do you know how to subscribe and like and do all that, Gilly? No?
Oh. We can help you, mate. We can help you.
Help me out, fellas.
Your 2 daughters can help you out.
So we have one of these to give away each week until stocks run out, until Wally gets sick and tired of signing them and Reuben Cotter disappears. But just subscribe to our channel, FOGS Queenslander Podcast. Write a comment below and click that like button. Everyone goes into the draw, and we've got one of these to give away each week. So 87 grand final against Manly, losing that game, the last grand final played at the SCG. And then from 89, it was just a dream run, I suppose. I know you lost a premiership to Penrith, but those grand final wins in that series, that space of, half a dozen years or so, can you encapsulate what football was like for you in that time?
I would just say, it was a great time to be at the club. All the ducks lined up. They got those. I mean, they probably always thought that Ricky Stewart and Daly and Laurie and Clyde were going to be good players, but they ended up such good players, And so, there was just everything lined up for them. And there wasn't so much of a thing with salary caps and that in those days and all that sort of thing. So they were there for a few years. And the team evolved, actually, thinking about it from the first team in 87, by the time we got to 94, those guys are still all there, but a lot of the other guys had rotated as well. So it was a different team then. They were both really good teams, and just a great time to be there. Loved living in Canberra, and Sheensy was a coach, for most of that, and a great coach, and Mal's the captain, so we had all the best people in the right positions.
When did you start thinking about playing Origin, that would be a goal for you and a dream, and was it ever a focus for you, or you seem to be the sort of player that it just let things happen and see what happens?
Yeah, I think you just enjoy playing. You're trying to get a little better all the time. It's always in the back of your mind. Anyone wants to play for Queensland, after growing up there, but you're just trying to get a little bit. And I was the sort of player that just got a little bit better each year, I think, You get a little bit more sure of yourself, and you get a little bit stronger, and you learn a little bit more, and you get a bit more confident. So I think I sort of got better like that myself. Some people come in, and Kerrod was more fearless than me. Like, he came in and he was going great straight away. And he had the series in 89, he got picked, and he was one of the best players for Queensland. But he was 2 years younger than me, but he came in and played fantastic.
Did you think that you might have missed your opportunity then?
Yeah, I did, yeah. That's okay. I mean, I was still in a good team and enjoying playing footy, but 100%. Most people would have, because he'd played so well for that series in particular, and they'd won, and he's 20 years old, so it's not looking too good.
I asked Kerrod the same question, but in a different way to you, because you obviously replaced Kerrod to get your opportunity when he was injured, but he had you know, he had one side of the look at it, you on the other side. How did you feel replacing your brother to get your opportunity in Origin?
Oh, it's always awkward, those things, you know, because your brother's and you're close and you've been best mates all your life, and he lives 30 metres from me now, you know, when we're 60 years old. So, but what I liked about it was that it ended up pretty even, I reckon, you know. So we were so lucky. He got to play some games, I got to play some games. They won some premierships at the Broncos, you know, we won some premierships at the Raiders. So overall, you think, well, everyone's had a bit of a win, at least. Kevy, you know, got the same. So, but it was awkward against your brother when you get on good, you know, because you're in the same position and it's more, one's going to be in, one's going to be out. So if you're happy, you know, then he's disappointed. Likewise, you're disappointed if he's happy. So I would say that my proudest thing in football, because and it was really great to all the things you do, but the NRL's been going for what, about 115 years now, and there's been lots of two brothers play for Australia, but there's only 1-3, and that's us. So you know that makes me feel more proud than any other things. Like, that's a really cool record to have. I was getting a bit jumpy for a while because I checked on those Kafusis because they had Antonio and
Felice.
Felice, you
yeah.
know. I thought, and there was another one. I thought, oh, tell me, because I used to check with Felice. He's not going to play for Australia, is he? And then the Trebojevic is the other one. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, it sort of leads to my next question, and you brought it up there with the fact that remarkably you can all sit back and share the experience because you've almost shared similar careers.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I mean. Everyone got to have their day in the sun, if you like, and have the good. You have the disappointing times too. Don't take me wrong. There's plenty of those, but I just, that's my proudest thing from a family point of view, that we were able to do that, because that's really cool, you know.
Okay, from an individual perspective then, taking the fact you're replacing your brother out of it, what was it like for you walking into camp for the first time knowing you're going to play for Queensland?
Oh, I was really nervous, like everyone does, you know, and you're a little bit thinking, oh, I don't want to let them down and hope they play okay. So I think that's a normal thing to come into those teams. Looking back, you get a bit older and you sort of wish you had your head on your shoulders now than what you did when you were playing, you know, and you sort of just wanted, all I remember is just excited. Of course, my game, which looked like it would be a one-off because Kera was suspended, and as I said, he played so well the year before, and you watch it for 10 years, and Wally's the captain, and he's the main man, and he hasn't missed a game for 10 years until my game, so he's out with a hamstring injury, I'm pretty sure it was. Hague's come in though, we had Hague's come in, so he had a good replacement there. But yeah, I remember that was, at the time, I was thinking, oh, I might only play one game, I won't play with Wally, you know. But yeah, it was quite intimidating to come into that, and you don't want to be letting them down, I suppose, as much as anything else. And we lost the game. It was only 8-0. Fatty was the captain, so we're in it and this and that. And I played steady without playing great. So yeah, that's my memory of it.
Was it quicker than anything you'd experienced?
Yeah, it was just different. The build up to it all and the excitement of it all, even though it's a long time ago now. It was, by the standards at the time, you know, it was a different sort of game, and yeah. It was, and you just, the atmosphere and the energy around the place and that sort of stuff is different to club games.
Well, you played another one. You played another 13. You played 14 all up. What was that era like of Origin? You played in one of the, as I mentioned before, with those Canberra Raiders sides, some of the legends of the game. So those teammates that you were talking about, you know, Stewart, Daly, Clyde, etc., were on the other side when you're playing Origin. What was that like?
Yeah, that made it hard for me. That was the problem there. So we certainly lost more than we won when I was playing in my year. I was lucky I got to experience a few wins there, but they were a challenge. They're good players, particularly Big Lazo at the time. I think Queensland had come through a really dominant patch there, you know, and a couple of the big ones. I always reckon that when Marty Bella and Bob Linder, two of the big forwards, retired around the same time there, that we just struggled to get some new ones in, and he was such a good player, Bobby. I reckon he never got the accolades he should have, Bobby Linder, and the effect that he had. And then, of course, we regrouped again and Queensland got going again down the track there. But it was a bit of when I was there, it was a bit of hard going for a few years, that's for sure.
And to, as you mentioned before, with your three brothers to play for Australia, what was it like when you were first selected to wear that green and gold?
Oh, just exciting you, to get your head around, you know, playing for Australia. My first game, I remember it reasonably, it was down in Melbourne, not at the new stadium now, at the old one where the Storm used to play.
Olympic Park.
Yeah. And we lost again. At least I had a better game personally, and I got the players playing things, so that made me feel a little bit better. We lost. And we come back and it was against the Kiwis, and we come back and won the next 2 games. So that was good, but yeah, it didn't get off to a great start, no.
Player of the match, though, in the World Cup final in 1992, Kangaroo Tours, that younger viewers and listeners would most probably wonder what Kangaroo Tours were all about. But you got to play, as I say, that era just had everything, and you managed to be in a Kangaroo touring side as well. What was that experience of travelling with some of the greats of the game?
Yeah, it was just awesome, and great memories. What you didn't know at the time, that was the last Kangaroo Tour, a proper full-length one, where you play the club sides and you got a bit of downtime and you can have a bit of fun. You got Alfie on tour with you and those blokes, you're going to have Kevy, you're going to have some fun. And you didn't know it though in 94. Who would have known that would never happen again? I mean, if you would have known, you would have been more appreciative, I suppose. And there's always, each era has their good and, different highlights and stuff, but I suppose that was before they knocked down the old Wembley Stadium and we got to play the World Cup final there and we won near the end, and I loved it other than the fact we won. I had a good game personally, and Kevin was a big influence at the end of the game. He threw a really good ball to Pearl to win us the game, so I enjoyed that even more because my brother had come on and done well, and I'd had it, and we had a great win as a team, so that was good. And England was always really good memories for me over there, personally, and then 94 we won the decider and had a good game again and got enough little recognition, and so it was just, and it's different. It's a different experience. I'm glad the players that play now get a chance to go over there, but it's still not quite the same when you're under the pump all the time. One of the funniest things is watching the games when you play Halifax and Wigan and Widnes and all those different teams. That was more. It's just different because it's not the same pressure that you're under all the time now.
Well, there's the pressure of not getting your head knocked off too. I mean, you brought up Halifax, and some of those games can get a little bit wild. And the Emus and the Kangaroos, sometimes you didn't want to be in the Emus, not because you weren't being picked in the test side, but because you didn't want to play those club teams.
Yeah, they often got pretty physical. You're right, because for the local fellas at the teams in England, it's a big moment for them to go and test themselves against all these Australian fellas, and they had all the supporters there all excited. So, but that added to the flavour of the day too. And it was, and you got to play at all the different suburban grounds, and it's it's just a different experience, and hard to describe until you're actually there, because they're right on the fence and they're just abusing you and yelling at you. I know you get that at Suncorp, it's a different sort of thing, but it's just different at England too. It's a different flavour.
This is a really tough question, I know, and I apologise if it annoys you. Is there a moment in the career that stands out that you look back on and I wouldn't mind reliving that just one more time? That was such a great moment.
1994, at the end of 94, I touched on before, we won the deciding test match there on the last Kangaroo Tour, and I had a good game personally on top. That was great, and we'd won the grand final a month before that, so I'd say that finished the season, But I lost the State of Origin earlier, game 3, the decider, so that was the only negative. Otherwise, it would have been just perfect for me, so... Yeah, but probably 1994. That's when I reckon I was playing as good as what I have, and we had some good results for the teams I was involved in.
Who had the biggest influence on your career?
I say my family, because that's the ones you talk to all the time and you grew up and you learn to play with and so on. So, but then you get that side of it, and then you get, from a coaching point of view, Tim Sheens was a big, major influence there. He coached us for a long time at Canberra and up at the Cowboys when I was up there for a couple of years. He's a really good coach, a good fella, and he knows his stuff, and so he was a big influence too. And then you get to the players. Mal was captain of every team I was in with Canberra, Queensland, Australia, and he was obviously a really good influence on me. If I get a bit wayward when I was a young bloke, very patient with me, he was, Mal. He knows that too. He looks at me sometimes. But he was a great fella to be the captain. And then you had the other, those blokes I mentioned earlier. You got the older blokes, helping when you're young, Badge and Corny and all those great Dean Lance. There's a heap of them down there, and then you get to watch Laurie Daly and Brad Clyde and Ricky Stewart doing their stuff and learning off them. You're lucky too,
Yeah, it's another difficult question because you look back and look at the players you would have played with or against in that era, and trying to pick a best 13 that you played with or against would be tough. So to narrow it down to some of the, your favourite players that you played with doesn't necessarily have to be those superstars, but just someone you enjoyed playing alongside.
I don't know. I've probably mentioned most of them. Most of them there were those guys. I always found it awkward because I was such good friends with Alf and Ricky, with both of them. And at the time, it was always who's going to be picked. Are you going to pick one of those two? Different players, but both good players. And one of them gets disappointed too. So I avoided those comparisons, not picking who's better out of them two all the time. I don't know really. I really at Canberra. People often ask me at the Raiders who's the toughest. Ruben Wickie's the hardest bloke I reckon I've seen play football when I was playing. He's like a bit of granite, that fella. Geez, he was tough, especially when he was a young bloke playing in the centres, and he'd come in and played all those games. But he was so good there. And then I used to love watching Chicka play. He was on the wing because he used to come in, and you'd see him going to dummy half, and I could hear him saying, "Watch him, he'll run." And I'm thinking, the opposition, I'm thinking, yeah, good luck with that. And sure enough, he'd get out and get them feet going. And
Best 40-year-old ever to play the game, isn't he?
Yeah, he was. I remember Sheensy, he was 36, I think, in 91 or 90, 91, whichever was the last, and he was going to retire. And I was saying, no, get him to play again, Sheensy. And then we were all telling Sheensy to try and sign him just to play the home games if he was getting tired from the travelling. Because we were all desperate for him to keep playing because we all just loved playing. He was such a good player.
How do you reckon a young bloke at Baval going along to the Swifts and sitting on the bench and waiting to be picked last by his brothers would think if he knew at that stage he's going to play 14 games for Queensland, 16 odd tests for Australia and, 200 and something games and premierships, etc. What do you reckon? You reckon he believe what was ahead of him?
No, I would have said you've had a few schooners, mate. But, as I said, because I think it was really helpful for me because I just never had any expectations. That's one plus about not being a star when you're a kid, There's nobody saying, oh, he'll play for Australia or he'll do this or that because you're just playing because you like it. And I think it helps in all seriousness now more if you can just concentrate on playing because you like it and you have fun and you enjoy it more so than everyone thinks. It annoys me, you can see when I'm talking to you, it annoys me that people say, oh, he mightn't play in the NRL. You wonder, oh, who cares, And I think sometimes I've got more of a chance to prosper and come through with less expectation and pressure on them because they just rip in and like it. Half the time you'll play better than too.
Steve Walters, congratulations on a wonderful career and thanks for your time.
Thank you, pleasure.
Thanks for watching this episode of the FOGS Queenslander podcast. If there's a FOG you want to hear from, leave a comment to let us know. And don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our videos.